Let's get started. This, I guess, is the 11th of my 14 town halls over these 2 weeks. And I pretty much do them all the same. We're going to leave most time to your questions, but for the first 10 or 12 minutes, I'm going to talk about recent goings-on in Washington, D.C., and look a little bit into the crystal ball of the future. At one meeting I said about what we could look forward to, and someone said, really? And I had to admit, probably not much to look forward to, so I just say look into the future. I'm going to start actually last December. Last December, you might remember when President Obama ran for election, he said he wanted to end tax cuts for people who earned over $250,000 a year to help defray the deficit and the debt. He said that as candidate, said that as president, and then the showdown came when those taxes were due to expire last December 31st. Unfortunately, he didn't carry through on that. He didn't stand down of the Congress, and at that time it was a Democratic Congress, actually. On one vote, Congress voted to increase this year's debt by over $400 billion. So we are confronted with a record deficit this year. That was a combination of the extension of all the Bush tax cuts and a new tax cut that President Obama got from one senator, Senator Kyle from Arizona, whose idea was to have a Social Security tax holiday. Reduce the tax on Social Security by 2% under the theory that would put people to work. Then a number of us objected to the fact that Social Security would then see loss of future income and trust fund money, so they said, okay, we'll fix it. We will borrow the money to put into Social Security while we give people the tax holiday. So that's what the deal that ended up. So we're borrowing $110 billion from China or someplace to put into Social Security while giving that tax rate. We are, as I like to say to people, we have the economy that tax breaks will give us. If you believe tax breaks will put people to work, look over the last 10 years. 8 years in the Bush administration, now 3 years of Obama-Bush tax cuts with a new tax cut by Obama. $5 trillion of tax cuts, principally oriented toward the very top income earners. And we have record and enduring unemployment. So I don't believe that that's the way either to the path of fiscal responsibility, certainly, and it's not the path toward getting people meaningfully back to work. So this one doesn't work, so I don't need to look at that. I want to sketch out sort of my ideas about how we move forward. First off, I think Congress needs sideboards. Some of you might remember back in '95, I voted for a constitutional amendment to require a balanced budget. It passed the House by a 2/3 vote. Failed in the Senate by 1 vote. That 1 vote was Mark Hatfield. And Mark and I are good friends. He was a great legislator, great for our state. We just had a different view of where things would go from that point. He was looking back. And he was looking back to days he'd been there 30 or 35 years, already been there a very long time at that point. And he said, people get together, these are serious problems, and he said, I'm chairman of the Appropriations Committee, we'll work this out. We can deal with these problems. I said, Mark, my experience here, much shorter, is that people tend to avoid tough decisions, and we aren't going to work things out unless we set sideboards on the debate. And I can give one example. When I was first in Congress, we had a big debate over whether to have an MX missile or a Midget Man missile to replace the Minuteman missile to defend ourselves against the then Soviet Union. And these are both very expensive systems, Midget Man or the new MX missile, mobile missile. And debate went on over a couple of years, and then finally time came to make a decision. Congress said, "Oh, let's buy them both." We didn't need both under any scenario, but that's what happened. And at that point, I said, "I've had it. We got to have a balance." So that was really a key point that brought me around to the balanced budget amendment. If the balanced budget amendment had gone into effect, we'd be paying off the last of our debt today. We wouldn't be talking about $14 trillion of debt. And what are we going to do for the future? Because you might remember when Clinton first came in, he raised taxes. Principally, again, on higher income people, the top tax rate for someone who earned over $250,000 a year went from 35% to 39.6%. Under his proposal, that's about a 12–13% increase in taxes for the very top. At that point, it was a very partisan debate, and no single Republican voted for his tax increases and said it'll be the end of capitalism and job creation. The job creators won't create jobs because it'll be too taxed. Then the Republicans took over Congress next year, and then they instituted a series of cuts, including welfare reform and other things, many of which I supported. And what happened as a result of it, but they didn't repeal the tax increases of President Clinton. So you have the tax revenue flowing in, and you have the cuts, and guess what? We balanced the budget. We paid down debt in the year 2000. We paid down $239 billion of debt, the first time we had paid down debt since the Eisenhower administration. We had 3.8% unemployment. People didn't stop investing because they were paying an extra 4.6% in taxes at the top. And if anybody can underline that, it'd be Warren Buffett. Last week he said, look, time to stop coddling billionaires and millionaires in this country. He never met a good investor who would refuse to make a profitable investment because they might have to pay 3 or 4% more in taxes. And he also says he's very embarrassed that his tax rate is half that of his secretary and doesn't think that's quite right. He's a pretty smart guy. He's the person who warned us in 1996 that we should regulate derivatives, called them financial weapons of mass destruction, and it was derivatives on Wall Street that magnified the bad housing practices and lending by a factor of 100, which crashed our economy. So he's been pretty darn right all along, and I think he's right now.